Okay, so welcome to the final video in this short unit on SketchUp. This video is just focused on what the assessment task is and where to get your resources and what to submit as evidence of what you've been able to learn. Now, when you're in Canvas, you should see something similar to this view. I've collapsed some of the earlier units. Yours may be a little bit different as far as the order of these, but the main thing you're looking for is the unit that's titled SketchUp. Here are some of the content that you've already looked through, and we've got the assessment down the bottom here, which I've given this title of realestate.com.au rubric, because that is what we're going to be using. Now, when you click on that, this will open up the section where you can do your submission, but more importantly right now, it's actually telling you exactly what it is you need to do for this task. Now, it's a little bit small on your video here to see all of the detail potentially, but the main thing is that you're going to be looking for a house on realestate.com.au, which is what I've got opened here. Now, as far as where you search for, if it's a house to buy or a house that's sold or renting, it's completely fine. I'll show you some of the more detailed specifics in a couple of minutes. You need to make sure that your walls have thickness, they're not paper thin. Now, you can use the section plane as one of the options here to give you a better chance of getting full marks for the wall thickness. The other areas you've got to think about are having windows with window frames, which are part of your thick walls. All right, so you don't want to have gaps visible, so the full window frames need to be done. Now, also your design duplication needs to be thought about. So you're looking at a real world house, so you need to try and make your model look exactly like the real world house. Now that includes the roof, it includes the materials you're using, where the windows are. So it's really important you look closely at the actual house that you're looking to copy. Now the scale is something that you'll be shown today. How to get your plan in, how to scale it appropriately, so this will make more sense after this video. And also you can get a couple of bonus points for designing some basic furniture. Now it doesn't have to be crazy complicated, but it does have to be more detailed than just drawing a rectangle or a circle and then using the push-pull tool once. That's really, really basic, and that won't give you the full marks for furniture. So technically you can get 12 out of 10, so that's why these are bonus points. They're there in case you lose a couple of points earlier on with some of the other aspects of it. One thing that is worth noting as well is that the evidence of your original house, so having the plan and some photos, are really important, because if you don't have that, as far as showing what your original source material is, it makes it almost impossible for me to be able to give you any points for the design duplication, because I won't know if you've actually copied a house. So that's a potential loss of 4 marks there if you don't include the original images. So what I'm going to do next is go on to realestate.com.au. You don't have to use this website. I'm just using it for the example because I know how to use it. I know the resources that are there are normally pretty good. And I just need to show you one example so you can follow that through. It makes it a little bit easier for you. Now I'm searching for Newtown. You can search for any suburb. So I'll click on the search tool there, and this will load up houses that are for sale in Newtown. Now I'd suggest you look for a single story. If you want to do a double story, that's okay, but I'll probably need to help you out a little bit in person when you're trying to get the 2 levels to work. Now on each of these, as we scroll through, you can see there's a unit. As we scroll through, you can click on the back little arrow that appears, and then that should show you the floor plan. Normally that's the default. And when you're looking at the floor plan, you want to make sure that it includes measurements. That is essential for one of the first things we're going to do once we get this plan into SketchUp. So if you'd like a house in particular, you can click on it and it will load up the page that has all of the images. Okay, so what I'd suggest you do is you right click, you save some of these images, and you also need to do that for the floor plan. Now if you have one particular set of images where it won't allow you to save the image, so this one does, save image as. If it doesn't come up with that, you can still use the print screen function on your keyboard. You can go into Photoshop and you can paste that image in there, and then you can crop it and save it as a JPEG. It has to be a JPEG for what we're doing. So if you save this image, I'll click on that now. Yep, so it's coming up as a JPEG. If it comes up as any other file type, I'd suggest that you save it, you open it up in Photoshop, and you save as, changing the file type to a JPEG. Again, if you're not sure how to do this, ask for help, but it is something we have covered in the previous Photoshop unit. So I'm going to cancel out of that, and I'll minimize this screen. Okay, so here is a floor plan that I've saved earlier. Now you can see there it is a JPEG file, and the way that you get it into SketchUp is you click on it and you drag it in. That's the easiest way. There are a couple of options, but this works pretty well. So I'm going to make that full screen now. And this is where the lady as well is really handy, having her there for scale, because straight away you can see that that image is definitely too small. There's no way that somebody that big could fit in a house that's this small. So what I'm going to do is change my view a little bit. And by default, it's already in the scale mode, but just in case yours doesn't, I'll click off that. I'll click back on the image, and just a reminder, you press S on your keyboard, it brings you back into the scale mode. And then I'm going to make that bigger. Okay, now what we need to do is find a measurement that we can test to see if this is accurate. Okay, so this is, let's look at this one. It's a 5.1 by 3.9 bedroom. Now this is definitely the longer length going along this top side. So if I get out my measuring tape and I click on one end and I drag it out to the other end, you can see that it's 4.46, 4.47. So I need to make this a little bit bigger. And you keep scaling it until you get pretty close to the right measurement, within about 10 centimeters or so. So I'll press escape to get off my tape measure, press S to go back onto scale mode, can make it a little bit bigger, and then I want to test it again. So from that end to that end. Okay, 5.15, that's pretty close. All right, so that's a good start. So it means that this floor plan is just about the identical size for the world that this lady is currently inhabiting. All right, so she would fit inside this house. Now, the next thing that we would do, I'll just get rid of my tape measure mode. The next thing we would do is to actually start tracing some of these walls. So just like in a previous example, I showed you a basic rectangle and I drew some walls around it. This time I'm going to use the square tool, and I'm going to zoom in nice and close so I can get pretty accurate there. I'll click on one corner, I'm going to shift and middle mouse button down, and I'm going to go all the way to this far corner over here. Now that's pretty close to where I want it to be. I might have made it just a little bit too big, but that's okay for this example. Now if I undo this, Control Z, you can see there's something there. Now that's a window. I'd suggest at this stage you just draw over the top of windows. So Control Y will redo what I did before. Alright, so I've got a wall there. I want to do a bit of a wall here. So I'm going to click on there and drag it over. Alright, so I've got the corner, and straight away I would be getting rid of this extra line that I don't need anymore. And I'll keep going around the house doing that until I had all of the walls done. Now I've actually made a mistake here. This bit is a window. So what I would want to do is get my rectangle tool, click on the end, and I'd want to continue this. And this wall's a little bit thicker here, so it's a bit of an external wall. Now the tricky bit is getting it so it lines up perfectly with this area up the top here. So what I'd suggest you do is hover your mouse over that top corner on the end point, you move it down, and you can see it's wanting to stick on that end point now. I click and it's lined up perfectly, and I can get rid of this line. If at any stage suddenly the contents of the inside of your shape disappears, it means there's a mistake that's been made, and we need to fix that before you go any further. It gets messy later on if you leave mistakes in there. Alright, so I'm going to keep going around. I'm going to draw a couple more of these lines in. I'll go from this bottom corner. Now over here we've got a covered entertaining area, so I'm going to leave that bit off. I'm just going to do the main walls. Got that bit there. Got this area, so I'll go from here to here, and I'll get rid of those extra little lines. Now I'm going to do maybe one or two more walls that are attached to here, so you get a bit of an idea of what's going on. The wall I've got here, I'll go all the way down, but I'm not going to put it where the door is. So I'll start this one over here, and to get that to line up, again I hover my mouse over that endpoint, I go down, I click, and then I hover my mouse on this endpoint, and that will then allow me to line that up perfectly going down there. And I'll do this little bit here. Okay, so I've done a few of my walls. It's enough to show you what the next step of the process is. Okay, well, I've got a line there that I need to get rid of. So where possible, I want it to be one shape. So you can see that that wall there is all one continuous shape. So if I look out a bit, you can see I've done some of my walls, but not all of them. I've left a gap where the door is there. I wouldn't put a wall there because there is no door or window. Where there's this, looks like maybe a concertina or a sliding door, it's up to you whether you want to include that as a wall and then knock out a window later on. So you need to make those decisions. But before you do anything else, you want it to be nice and simple looking like what this is. There's no crazy shapes where things are sticking out where they shouldn't be. And then I can go into my push-pull. I can click on it once and let go. All right, so I don't have my finger on the left mouse button, which means I can rotate and move around. Now, after I've pushed it in the air a little bit of the distance, I'm now going to type 2.4 on my keyboard, and you can see that's down in the bottom right of my screen, and then I press enter. So that has now done that at a 2.4 height. All right, so that is a fairly standard height for a house. So after I've gone through and I've done all of my walls, then it should look pretty close to resembling a real house. I'm going to show you one easy little way to do this wall over here so it's the same height. I could drag it up and type in 2.4. The other option I can do is click, drag it up, and then I snap to this endpoint over here, and you can see that that has now made that the same height. And I can double check by looking at it sideways. All right, so a really quick way to start getting some walls in. It is then up to you to start putting in the windows, using the construction lines, putting in the right materials and that sort of stuff. All right, so after you've gone through and you've constructed this, you've coloured it the right way, you've built your roof on top of it, you've used your section plane. Now these are all things that you were shown in the previous video, then you'll be pretty close to being done. As far as your submission into Canvas goes, I'd suggest you do a Word document or a PowerPoint, and that way it's one file that can have your floor plan and some of the images of your house placed into there, and that way there's only two files you've actually got to submit. The SketchUp file with the section plane ready to go if you've chosen to do that, and also your Word document or your PowerPoint for your evidence. Once you've done that, you're sorted. So good luck, and hopefully you make something that you're really proud of.